I think it's incredibly important, no matter what level you're at in this business, to build a database and then utilize that database by, again, communicating with everyone in it on a pretty high frequency and provide value. This is a relationship business. That's what it's all about.
Welcome back. Today we're speaking with Justin Havre. So he is the top real estate agent in all of our Alberta. So Calgary, he's the top in regards to overall transactions and volume. He's helped over 11,000 families buy and sell their home. He's transacted in 2024 alone over 500 million in sales volume in a year. And this is in a slower time as well. So he oversees a large team that delivers excellent service and has been in the business for over 20 years. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Mark. Excited to be here.
Yeah, and you and I, we got into a whole conversation before we started, and I respect what you've been able to build in the Calgary market there. Maybe you could share with the listeners a little bit of your backstory of what actually got you into real estate.
So, yeah, I got into real estate 20 years ago, and it's hard to imagine that it was 20 years ago. It seems like maybe it was 5 years ago. And as you know, time in this business seems to go by exceptionally fast. And, I came from a tech background. I was, installing high-speed internet for Shaw back in the day when Shaw used to be around in the early 2000s. And then I was installing bi-directional internet satellites, or so climbing up on rooftops in the wintertime, which you can imagine is no fun. An opportunity was to go and take my real estate course, and I never thought of myself as a salesperson, never thought about even getting into real estate. It was an opportunity that I, said, hey, why not? And next thing you know, first year in real estate, I was, again, rookie of the year and a brokerage of 700 agents. The very first agent that I did a deal with tried to recruit me onto the team. And I'm like, nah, I think I'm good. And I had a really good network of friends and a good sphere around me as well. And, one of my friends was my very first transaction, which again, totally honored to, have that trust in your friends so early on, first month of real estate. But one of the things that I kind of understood from the very beginning is that in order to survive in this business is that you need to generate leads and opportunities. So I always invested minimum 25% of my commissions back into the business. And I decided to focus on building websites. My very first website was justlistedcalgary.ca. May have gotten that idea from the justlisted.ca commercial back in the day. If you remember, that was on HGTV. And it was kind of funny now reflecting on that. I was actually talking to somebody else here recently about that, because people would land on my website and they said, how did you hear about us? I saw your commercial. I didn't have a commercial. It was a just listed commercial on TV. So it's kind of an interesting spin-off from that. I advertised my very first website in the back of the newspaper, the old version of doing PPC.
Yeah.
But it drove traffic to the website. And I was very fortunate that my realtor at the time is the one that took me under his wings and mentored me. And he is still on my team to this day. And he's been in business now for 27 years. So I had a real good mentor, still have a mentor in him as well, as he's still, again, on my team to this day. And with obsessing about search engine optimization and getting my website to rank high in Google, what happens if you are at the top of Google? You get a lot of visibility, which means you get a lot of traffic, which means you generate a lot of leads. And that served its purpose. I built a team of about 5 agents in the office where I was located, but it wasn't really a team at first. It was more or less me handing out referrals and then collecting a referral on every deal. And that resulted in me becoming a top agent in the company because I collected so many referrals. And then the brokerage said that, hey, you can't operate like this anymore. You got to start a team. And I was kind of forced into starting a team. So January 1st, 2010 was when Justin Havre Associates was founded, and when I first started an official team. And then just kind of tinkering away, building a team. I met a good friend of mine, Gary Ashton, out of Nashville, who runs the #1 Remax team in the world. I met him at a conference in September of 2012. And we were sitting around the table talking about lead gen, came to me, asked me how many agents I had, how many leads we were generating on a daily basis. And I was generating at that time about 150 leads a day organically with 4 other agents. And you know this, Mark, that's way too many leads
Yeah.
for only 4 people.
Yeah.
And that's where my light bulb went off. I went home, hired my first admin, and we grew from 4 or 5 agents in December of 2012 to 28 agents in January. It was a little bit of a circus.
That's fast scaling.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, it was fast scaling, fast moving, and again, like I would drop 55 leads in an agent's funnel, on a Saturday morning when they have a full day of showings and open houses. I'm like, hey, just call them when you can.
Yeah.
I was good at creating a little bit of anxiety in people when I was dropping that many leads on them. But obviously, the system and the team has evolved so much since then. And now we have, 80 agents on the team. When I was at that independent brokerage, we ended up moving over to Remax. We spent about 9.5 years there. And then we decided to move over a couple of years ago to EXP. And that's where we're operating out of now. And we're 80 agents strong.
Amazing. Well, and I know that's very high level. There were probably many, we'll say, walls that you had to overcome in order to get where you are right now. For the listeners out there, you had a network when you first started. What recommendation would you give for a new agent that is getting into the business to have a strong start? Maybe they don't have a network. They look at you like, oh, I'm new to an area and I just don't have. What would be your suggestion for them to have like a really strong start in this business?
Well, I think it's incredibly important, no matter what level you're at in this business, to build a database and then utilize that database by, again, communicating with everyone in it on a pretty high frequency and provide value. This is a relationship business. That's what it's all about. And the better you are at nurturing those relationships and bringing value, and again, making sure that you listen to the needs of the people in your circle, so to speak, and don't be salesy. That's one of the things I've never been. I've never been pushing sales. It's more about offer value, offer education. There are many people in this industry that are shifting the mindset that, hey, we're not a real estate agent, we're a trusted advisor. Because it shouldn't really matter when someone is looking to buy or sell. They're actually going to determine that based on their current situation. And if you can provide them with all the right information so that they can make that informed decision when the time is right for them. And
Mm,
I think it's, pretty interesting when you hear agents, it's almost like commission breath. It's like, hey, when's a good time to buy or sell? Like, no, it's a great time. Well, is it? I think it all depends on that family's current situation, what their want and desires are. But, again, this is part of, like, when you get into this business, you have to build that book of business. You have to build a database, and you should have a CRM of some sort. It shouldn't be your phone, although it could be if you use it consistently. So I would say, yeah, always look to add people into your CRM. Have a CRM that you actually use, because the best CRM you use is the one that you use.
yeah. I love what you said about providing value. It's a different approach, right? When you're looking for problems and, we'll say, pleasure and pain that's out there in the market, and you're out there to solve problems. And so it's a different approach. And I think people feel it as well versus like, oh yeah, you should be buying right now. And you're talking, what's interesting, this is something like our team members, they know that any sort of negative talk, the whole buyers are liars sort of mindset is like snuffed out. But when that office talk happens back in the office of, this sales breath or commission breath, as you had mentioned, and that's happening, buyers and sellers, they feel it when they go out there. You can't have like this two-faced, it's like clients are too smart. They just feel like something's off with that. Is something off with that, honey? Off with that guy? Right.
Oh
And
yeah. No,
so,
they can
yeah,
sense it from a mile away.
yeah,
And this is where I think you should approach every single opportunity with just provide value. First and foremost, make sure that you listen more than you speak. right? And really make sure that you connect with them and pay attention to the details. And, again, if they have an interest in moving, they will make the move when the time is right for them. Clearly, you are someone in your market right now where, again, the market is very challenging. They come to you to seek for advice how to get out of whatever situation they're in. And that is, again, when you are an agent in challenging markets, they actually seek out the professionals who get results. But how do they get results? They give the client all the options and give different scenarios and different strategies, and then they choose the best one with the client.
It's so good. I've read somewhere recently, it's like the agent controls the process, and the client controls the decision. So it's like you creating a process to help and guide them towards making an educated decision is really good, but they make the decision. You don't make the decision,
Oh.
right? And sometimes it's actually giving guidance, as in like, here's what I think. And this is where I've found some of the strong agents that compared to more of the weaker, it's like providing all the comparables, and just like, well, completely, what do you think, versus like, guiding them in the right direction, and giving that insight. Like when you walk into a restaurant, for example, sometimes you want a guy telling you like, this is what I would do, and here's why I would do it, not just because it's good for me, but because this is good for you, because you told me this, and this was important to you. So that's where it goes back to what you were saying about the listening. It's like truly listening of what are they going after, their outcome, what's the problem they're trying to overcome here right now, and then go to work on solving that in a way that leads them to make the right decision, if that makes sense.
And also give them options of something that may not have thought about as well. Like I'll give an example. There was a time when I had a client reach out. They were interviewing 3 agents to sell their property. They were building a new house and they were getting ready to take possession of that. Uh, my first question to them when I sat down at the kitchen table with them was like, "Hey, do you guys need to sell this home in order to close on your new one?"
Mm,
And they said, "No, we don't need to do that." I closed and wrapped everything up. So may I make a recommendation? I recommend that you keep this property as an investment property. Find yourself a really good tenant and think about the future wealth of your family and use this as one of your investment vehicles. I
yeah.
was the only one that recommended that out of everyone that they interviewed. They
Mm,
kept the property, still have it to this day. And who do you think gets a lot of referrals from that client?
yeah. 100%.
Right. And it's looking out for their best interests. There are going to be times when you're also going to talk people out of making a purchase. We all know that people can get really excited about a property when they walk in. You see it in their eyes, you see it on their face when they walk in, like, oh, this is it. But you know yourself that, hey, you know what? This property is going to be a tough sell down the road because it's on a busy road or it backs onto power lines or whatever. If there's something negative about it, it is your duty to also educate them on that. Hey, my job isn't just to sell you a property, it's to help you acquire a property that's a safe investment that is sellable down the road again as well, because there will be a time when they go to sell it.
I love that. It's um, it's interesting because that goes back to being the guide and giving them insight. And they're people don't want order takers. They want somebody that's going to guide them through. It's interesting having this mindset of like helping people and doing what's best. Um, we actually we relate it to when people call in and they want their opinion of values, or they just want an update on value for their home, and they're like, "Listen, I'm not looking to sell." It's interesting because we'll hear it a lot where it's like, "Oh no, we don't do those," from other agents. What we found actually is when they call us and we go over, right from like the beginning of my career through, it was like when I went over and I did the full listing presentation and I went through everything, like, and I just killed it. So much value, right? Give evidence. They're like, we're not. It's like this down the road. This is going to give you a good understanding of how the process works if you do want to sell down the road. But here's your overall value, and there's no charge. Uh, and it's so interesting, those cases where you've given, where you're not going to get something back. It's so, because that's what you're doing is you're depositing into the relationship in a big way that's not normal. And so that's why I love for what you did with the investment. What a great example of that as well. And I would imagine, I mean, That's probably put $500,000 in their pocket, that one decision,
Oh, at least.
right?
Right. And this is again like going back to being a trusted advisor.
Yeah.
I think if you want to have longevity in this industry, you got to approach that mindset of like whatever is best for the client first and foremost. Again, we should always operate like that. But if you take care of your clients will take care of you. And I think there's one thing too that many agents they don't necessarily think of the true value of one opportunity. The average Canadian moves about 7 times in their lifetime. So you got to think of that one client is 14 transaction sides if you're good at nurturing that relationship and providing value to them through that entire process. And guess what else? They're going to give you referrals because you've been such a good agent and good advocate for them and a good advisor. In a lifetime, how many referrals do you think you get from a client? 10 at least,
At
right?
least.
So
Yeah.
if those 10 also transact 14 times,
Yeah.
so just do some simple math. Whatever average commission you have in today in your market, multiply that by 14 times and then multiply that by 10. And then look at now, are you treating every client like it's a million and a half, $2 million opportunity?
Yeah. 100%. That's such great context, Justin. And yeah, the referrals turn into referrals, turn into referrals, and that's how you grow. Um, it's interesting. One relationship, it's actually interesting that even if they're not a client and you interact with somebody, I've had it before where like you did something but they weren't a client, and they remembered it, and then they call you back later, or they refer you and they're not even a client yet. So it's like leaving sparks of something. You leave sparks of something, you leave your signature in every interaction within your hometown
But
community.
you know what else, Mark? You bring up actually something that's really valid right here, and that is also a testament to the brand that you have built in your marketplace. Because this is what happens when you build a strong personal brand is that you actually get referrals from people that aren't even a client of yours. They're not in
Right.
your CRM,
Yeah.
right? But because you have built up such a strong brand in the marketplace and you have a track record of delivering results, this is actually what happens. So again, kudos to you, Mark, for doing that. But that is again, for those of you guys who are listening, that is the power of building a strong personal brand in your market.
Yeah. No, really, really great insight. So how about habits? So people look at you, Justin, like, holy, like you scaled up and did something amazing. So if you go back to the daily habits that you did as you were growing and kind of scaling as an agent, we'll start with, and then any of your top agents. I mean, you have a lot of successful agents. I mean, you have 80 there, but you have some really strong ones that work with you. What is it that they do on a daily basis when it comes to habits and like activities, and maybe that you've done that you recommend for the listeners to grow their business?
It's interesting because during my 20 years, I've definitely seen a lot of different levels of production in agents, and there's certain character traits that are definitely similar in all of them, and that is they're first and foremost highly motivated and driven, and they create the routines in their day. One of the things that they're always doing is they're always doing prospecting and nurturing their database, right? So that's constant. They're also big advocates of learning, um, being attending all the team training, all the additional training seminars, going outside, getting even further education themselves because they just have that hunger. They're also constantly practicing their presentations. For instance, one of the top agents on my team, I've been working with her for 12, 13 years. She practices her listing presentation minimum 3 times a week. And that's someone that's been in the business for 16, 17 years,
Mm,
right? And that is something that is constant in top producers. They are constantly honing their skills, wanting to get better. We know that in this business, for you to have longevity, you need to constantly adapt to consumer behavior,
yeah.
what the consumer demands as well. And at the same time, the different market conditions requires different strategies. And we need to be on top of our game if we want to be a top producer. Another thing that is common as well, many of them have good, healthy habits. They're doing some sort of physical activity, some sort of sport. Whether that is being super disciplined when it comes to training. Some of them are, I would consider, pretty high performance athletes. We have one guy on the team. I mean, a few weeks ago, he went on a 88-kilometer race run. And I like up and down mountains. It was like 4,500 meters of elevation. And he did it in 13 hours. And I'm like, oh man, no thanks. But, again, but one of the things that he said, he's like, because he just challenged himself mentally and physically to the point where like, it's just a race between himself, between his ears. But then what happens is prospecting business. He's like, that's so easy because he's conditioned his mind and body. So, again, I would say like for somebody that's looking to get into this business, or you're an agent who, again, wants to take your business to the next level, you know, look at your calendar, look at your commitments in there. Are you holding yourself accountable to what you say you're going to do? And it is all about, building small habits first and foremost and doing that consistently. But then again, over time, as they say, small hinges swing big doors. And all success is built on the back of micro commitments and micro wins. There's also a lot of failures behind the scenes as well that many people don't necessarily see. But each one of those failures is a lesson. And, I look at that as always, like, never a failure, always a lesson. And if you are crystal clear on where you want to take your business, what you want the business to be as a vehicle for yourself and your family, because I believe that any success that you have in this business can truly be that vehicle to create memorable life experiences for yourself and your family. And for those who have achieved high level of success, that money doesn't change you. It doesn't bring you happiness, but experiences, that's something that could bring a lot of happiness.
Yeah, I love that. So good. There's so much gold in what you said there, Justin. Uh, you were talking about hunger and the ability to work hard. Um, practicing the presentation. It's interesting when we look for agents. There's three things that we've really boiled it down to that really set the agents that thrive from the agents that don't. Is number one is like a genuine love of people. It's they just, you either have it or you don't. You can't train it. If they're, if they have that commission breath sort from coming in, and they don't have that genuine care, that's a hard thing to train. And the second one is a willingness to learn, cup half full. And it's interesting because we've hired some PhDs and MBAs in the past, and I don't want to throw a blanket over everyone, but it was like constantly trying to like, you know, tweak and improve, and just not taking action with like, here's the presentation, here's how we do it, it's been proven, go and learn it and come back. But it's like, well, I'm kind of doing this and not getting around. So like the ability to like learn and be a sponge and then implement that feedback or that loop of learning and then taking action quickly. That's number two. And then number three was like, is a willingness, so willingness to learn and a willingness to work hard.
Skill and will.
Yeah, like
You gotta have both, right? Like, well, yeah, and it takes. I mean, in this business, 87% of agents fail in the first 5 years. And I remember when I was getting my real estate license in the classroom, and the teacher said, like, it was like 37 of us in the classroom at the time, and he said, look around this room, and he said, in 2 years' time, there's only going to be two of you left in this business.
yeah,
And I'm like, what did I just sign up for? What am I doing here?
yeah,
Like, if the failure rate is that high. And I remember having a conversation with that broker who was a teacher of the classroom a few years later. I'm like, why would you like scare us like that? And he's like, I was just telling you the facts. Look at where you are now. And I'm like, true. But I think it's important for any agent in this business. Like, it is truly a business where if you lean into it, input equals output. And yes, you know what? The first few years, there's a lot of learning, and then learning never stops. And it's also really important to, as we touched on earlier, is to not let ego get in the way as well, because that ego can be a dream killer.
100%. Yeah, totally agree with that. I've seen that through the years. Actually, in our market, there's when I joined in the business, when I came into it, the two top agents in our marketplace were, I mean, they were the big dogs, right? And then I got to see some examples of just not doing what they did to get there, and there's some, it's a little bit of ego and this and that. And actually that was a blessing for me, Justin, seeing that at the beginning, because I saw them at the top and then I saw them start to decline. And it's been good, because it's always had like this fear in the back of my mind of like, don't get prideful, don't get hubris to success. And, like you read Jim Collins' Good to Great, and How the Mighty Fallen. It's like hubris of success. It was just like which is basically like arrogance for the listeners there. It's like, thinking you're better than so, and then you stop doing the things that got you there, and stop learning. And what got you there at the beginning was a hunger to learn and grow and implement. Um,
And to do
yeah,
the work, right? Like, I think,
yeah,
one of the things that, from my experience going through challenging markets, and agents who actually stick it through those markets and actually put in the work, man, they become some pretty incredible agents. Because again, it's creating that action economy. It's not the market that should dictate your income. It's you that should dictate that. And you have the ability to do that no matter what the market conditions are. It's, again, you just need to lean into your business and treat it like a business. Put in the time. Yeah, maybe you have to put in extra hours than you're used to in a different market, but every market requires different skill and different activities in order to, get people across the finish line.
it's such a good point, like about putting in the work. And it's interesting, what I've identified through the years is what many times what an agent thinks they're working and what they're actually working, they don't align. So there's this, like, with tracking is such a beautiful, I don't know if you read Buy Back Your Time, but Dan Martell, he talks about like tracking your
It's
time.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. This is actually something we have actually incorporated into our agent training program that we run on our team now. We actually get our agents to track all the activities that they're doing when they're prospecting, and we have a time block. We usually put in 90-minute blocks, and we track how many calls did they make, how many conversations did they have, how many leads did they claim, how many appointments did they set if they're calling from the pond. And we track that, like after every session, they have to report that. But that actually teaches them to say, okay, this is what I can accomplish in a compressed time where I'm fully focused. Right. Because again, like some agents will sit there in the CRM, or let's sit on Facebook. Oh, I'm working. No, you're not working. Like, are you actually measuring the activities that you're doing? And I think that, again, talking about classroom human behavior, everybody's in a classroom of human behavior. How am I performing? How am I showing up? How am I focused? Everybody has a superpower, and superpower is focus. Yet we live in a world of distractions. We see 10,000 plus ads a day. We have however many different social media accounts and trying to grab our attention and distract us. I have a coach, and he sits in a dark room. He has no windows, but he's in there doing his coaching calls every day. And he's like, yeah, I have no distractions. And I'm like, man, good on you for being that dialed in. But at the same time, like, it just shows you the discipline that you need to have. If you want to do great things, you got to obviously create some pain elsewhere. But then that will then lead to the pleasure because of your achievements.
That's great. Yeah, one of my kind of heroes, Sly, right? Sylvester Stallone. When he wrote Rocky, like he painted his windows black, right? And you just sit there until he could write. I love that from a distraction standpoint. Here's a follow up question. what advice do you have for the agents out there listening to be less distracted and get more focus on maybe their 90-minute blocks, or even, that's maybe a tactic, but how do agents stay more focused on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I think it's, again, it comes down to personal discipline. Like you really got to dig deep of like, why are you doing what you're doing? What's the end goal? What are you trying to achieve for yourself personally? You got to find something that, again, drives you through the discomfort, because of the success that you will achieve through this business. Whether that is paying off debt, getting, buying your first home, buying a car or cottage, or whatever that is, you got to find something that means something to you so you can push through that. Why do you go to the gym every day? Right? Why did you get up at 5:15 in the morning to show up for the gym every single day, 5 days a week? You do it because you have a goal that you want to obtain, and it is just kind of pushing through that. And then, but if you measure what you're able to achieve in that time, then gamify it. Hey, okay, I made X number of dials. I had X number of conversations. Clearly, you can't control how many conversations you can have in a 90-minute block. And obviously, the longer you can keep someone on the phone, that's another thing to measure as well. Like, how long are you able to keep the people on the phone when you get them on the phone? That can also be a game. So, are you tracking that? I mean, we use Follow Up Boss as a CRM, and you have the ability to track that in the CRM as well. And then we use that in conjunction with Shiloh, which is an AI plugin into our CRM, which also will rate the agent's performance on the call, and it actually also coaches the agents on the call as well. So we're actually having agents that are like, oh, what kind of score did I get on my call? Log into the system. I was like, oh, it was a 3-star, it was a 5-star, oh, it was a 1-star. Ooh, that also flags us as, in part of the leadership. We're like, hey, is this an opportunity that we can save? And what some of the agents are actually doing using that tool is they're like, oh man, I totally missed that opportunity. So then they call back like, hey, Mark, I was just thinking about the conversation we had a few moments ago. Why don't we do this? They make a recommendation based on the coaching in the system. But, at the end of the day, in this business, there's no magic pill. It's just called work. And it doesn't matter how long you've been in the business. Sure, are there tools and technology that's trying to distract us right now in our industry and be the shiny object? Oh, 100%. But at the core of it all, it is all about connecting with the people in your database and nurturing and building those relationships. And that can only happen if you're authentic and you make human connections.
Mm, yeah.
But
Yeah.
you could also use your phone and send a video, because a video is just as impactful as sometimes meeting them in person.
Mm. Yeah. No, it's been being creative in regards to how you're communicating and adding value. Yeah, 100% agree with you on that. Um, you've seen agents come and go. You've seen agents come to your team and just blow it up and be super successful. Uh, I'm curious, you've seen what you've seen. What do you think is the biggest differentiation between an agent from a mindset standpoint? Like what does a successful agent think, and what is their overall mindset compared to an agent that doesn't thrive? What would be kind of the top things that they would have in order to thrive from a mindset standpoint?
It's pretty simple. The agents that do well, they're all in. They don't have a plan B. They're all in. Failure is not an option. Going back is not an option. It might also help if you have someone that's kind of doubting you as well, that you want to prove wrong, right? You got to have that fire in the belly. The ones that don't, I mean, they're just, oh, I'm just going to try this out. They're not fully committed. That's really what it comes down to. Are you committed or are you not? And if you're not committed, well, you still have a job, another job, or you have plan B. If you don't have a plan B, this is it. And again, it also needs to be a healthy obsession as well. And I'm pretty guilty of that. When I first got into the business, I obsessed. I mean, I was a workaholic then, and I'm a workaholic now. It's a hard thing to change in And maybe it's just something that's just kind of deeply ingrained in me. It did cost me a marriage, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it. It's all about the lessons that you learn from it. But again, like, give an example, like, I'd be so focused on the deal, so we would have anniversary dinner. I'll be like, sorry, can we cut this short tonight? I got to work on a deal. That doesn't fly long, right? So that ends up kind of catching up with you. And the one thing that I say to any agent that's getting into the business is the number one appointment in here is your family. That's your VIP. And if you can learn that from the very beginning, and when you have a client that calls and say, "Hey, Mark, I want to look at a house at 7 o'clock tomorrow night," and you're like, uh, you want to go help them, but again, you have somebody very important that you have a commitment to.
Yeah.
You obviously find another time, or if you're on a team, you get a team member to cover, because no matter what level of success you achieve, if you have no one to share it with, it's a pretty lonely and dark place. Right. So that's one of the recommendations I make to any new agent. It's like, it's like, keep your family, keep your, kids' hockey game, practice, show up for that. You can build a business around that. That's one of the beautiful parts about this business, is that you have flexibility, but you also got to treat it like a business. You got to put in the time. But again, your family will always be a part of you if you make time for them, because the last thing that you want them to feel is that your clients are more important than them.
Mm. Oh, man, that's such a great insight, Justin. And I got to share a story from actually Paula Mitchell. So she's an agent in the Brampton area. You probably know who she is, but she's I met her at one of our when I was with Rolla Page. We do these chairman retreats, and she said to me one day, she's like, "Mark, one thing I did from an early into the business, she's like, I always booked off 4 to 6, and she's like, I would." It was the rule that I would book it off. I'd go home for dinner and then I'd go back out after. And she's like, there was exceptions, but that was the rule. And I thought, it was interesting, because I would be like, 7 days, and this is a power of associations and learning from others, right? And talking, and what you and I are doing right now, it's powerful. You go to conferences, and she gave that idea. I'm like, it's interesting. And then so I started doing it, and sometimes it would be an hour, sometimes it would be hour and a half. I'd come home, change my clothes. Sometimes you go to these houses and you got to take your socks off, right, because you got dog hair all over and stuff, and then relax, and then go back out after on appointments. And so it was interesting, because when I started really honing in on it, I realized my productivity didn't go down, because what was happening was, during the day, I'm like, oh crap, I got to get done by this time because I'm going home for dinner. And I had to compress, and I learned this idea of the Parkinson's law of time compression. And it's like, if you go on vacation, we've all experienced this, right? You're on vacation, it's like, holy geez, like, I'm Superman here, because I got like 24 hours before I got to leave, and I can't negotiate with that. And so actually, that's like a really good thing, is you start compressing, giving yourself tighter timelines. And then when you're with clients and they're asking for that time, you can say, like, I'm booked at that time. Does this time or this time work better? And like, most of the time they're fine with it, right? It's like, oh no, I need to go run out. That's kind of the stories sometimes that we tell ourselves. So I totally agree. And I definitely haven't always been perfect with it. And I still work on it, on a regular basis. But I think that when you're really solid at home, I think that you could be even better at work.
Yeah, and I think it's, again, there's no such thing as being perfect in that at all. Like, especially in this business, we got to have a little bit of flexibility. It also help if you have a partner who's also understanding and supportive as well. And, we hear this thing, life work balance, out there, like, oh, I want to have life work balance. Like, I believe that it's more about finding a rhythm that works well for you and your lifestyle with your
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
Right? There are the times where you have to step out and make a call. Yeah, 100%. But then, again, there's also flexibility in that as well.
100%. The 100%. And the time that you're with the family, it's like you're really dialed in and looking. It's interesting that I found is like you can be with family but not really be there. And Joanna, she calls me out. She's like, "Where are you right now, Mark?" I'm thinking about business or whatever. She's like, "You can tell you got a lot going on in your mind." If your spouse can call you out on things, that's a blessing. I'll just tell you
My
that.
partner,
Yeah.
my partner Carmen, she's like, "You got the look on your face right now," and I'm like thinking about something business, and it might be an RBF face,
Yeah. No, I love it.
right? It's
Love
a
it.
resting bro face, and I'm just in deep thought and just staring into the distance. And she's like, "What's going on in there?" I'm like, "Oh, lots."
So good, man. Uh, I could, this conversation's going so well. Let me ask before we get into rapid fire. Um, you gave counsel to your client to hold on to the house to buy real estate. What investing advice would you have for the agents out there in like today's market with everything going on out there on making income is one thing, and that was a good part of the show is how they can look after clients, and the byproduct will be more income. That's a byproduct of doing what we talked about. But now they have, let's just say they have investment dollars to invest. What advice would you have for the real estate agents out there to make good decisions?
Well, again, I think it really depends on the agent's situation. There's a saying out there, always be your best client yourself. But then that's where you also got to make smart investment choices as well. Like real estate, in my opinion, should always be a long-term strategy. Clearly you guys are seeing in Ontario right now, the people that were I call them speculators, the ones that were doing the pre-construction buys with hopes to do the assignment sales. In my opinion, that's not real estate investing. That is pure speculation. So again, you got to obviously make sure that you make an informed decision on your investment, make sure that it is a long-term play. And if you can pull out more than one rental check per month out of each property, the more, the better. But you got to also like live within your means, invest within your means as well. And sometimes it's not bad to diversify as well, not have all your eggs in one basket when it comes to real estate. Maybe talk to a financial advisor and look at different aspects of it. If I was in the US, it might be a different story as well, because there's definitely a lot of tax benefits to invest in real estate down there, which, as a Canadian, and when you start learning about what's available down there, you kind of cry a little bit. And you could probably speak more to that. But again, just be smart with your money. Again, one of the things that I did and I chose to do for my business was, part of my investment strategy was to invest back into the business. To build lead generation machines. Over the years, like, I mean, I run over half a dozen different websites, and to me, those are assets as well, especially when I have a website like Calgary.com. Right. That gets me a lot of business. There's some websites that I can attest, millions of dollars of GCI a year. But it's also because I've invested into search engine optimization for 20 plus years, that kind of stuff. Right. So there's many different investment vehicles. Right. But obviously, owning real estate, we all know that that is historically a safe investment. And just make sure that you're fully informed, and also like talk to perhaps mentors in the marketplace where you operate out of that have done investing successfully. Get to learn the ins and outs of the different segments in the marketplace where they have had success in, because chances are you can replicate that success.
There's so much there, so much there. That was great response there, Justin. All right, we are into rapid fire. You ready? I got three last questions here for you, and we're going to wrap it up. All right, first question. Big reader, love reading. What's your favorite book that's made the biggest impact in your career?
This was a book that was recommended to me by my coach, John Sheplak, about 10 years ago, and it's called The Shadow Effect. It's learning about that negative inner dialogue that we all have that will try to self sabotage us. And that is a pretty powerful book, in my opinion.
Okay, right on. Uh, three words that people that know you best, how would they best describe you as?
humble, driven, and a mentor.
Mm, good. Awesome. And then what final advice do you have for the agents listening?
You know, treat this business like a business. Be all in, because really, the sky's the limit, but you also got to be fully committed to it. If you're a solo agent, find a mentor, find someone that you can learn from. Don't try to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, because there are many people that are like, oh, I'm going to do real estate differently. Well, really, there's not that many ways to do real estate. It is all a relationship based business. If you don't find a mentor, go find a team. Uh, Typically you can find some good teams in your marketplace, someone that has a proven track record, someone who has top-notch training, and always be a student, because the learning never stops. And if you go in with that mindset and you're 100% committed, maybe 110% committed,
Yeah.
you can beat any economic news headlines, because you bet on yourself and you create your own economy.
So good. That's such a great final thought for the listeners. Justin, I really appreciate you taking time. I know you're a busy guy, leading a large team, making an impact in your community, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. I enjoy the conversation.
It's truly an honor to be here, Mark, and keep doing what you do for our industry as well, and being a leader that you are.
Good man. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to the show. If you like the show, definitely share it with any other agents that you think will benefit from it. And remember, guys, keep on going full out. I love you.